This video will help you review what you should already know about Spanish pronunciation and spelling as you head into your first Spanish class at Fordham. Spanish pronunciation is fairly simple, so there's really only 4 topics I want to cover. The vowels of Spanish, don't add extra sounds, H and Z, and R. Spanish and English have the same 5 vowel letters, but differently from English, in Spanish, each vowel letter only makes one sound, and those 5 sounds are I, E, A, O, U. Notice that those sounds are short and pure. They're illustrated, all 5 of them, in the word comunicarse. So compare the final syllable, se, with the English word say, which is long and actually adds a Y sound at the end. English is actually always adding Y to words that have a U in them, like communicate or music or computer, and you definitely want to avoid doing this when speaking Spanish. H and Z are also different in Spanish and English. H is always silent in Spanish, whether it's at the beginning of a word, as in hola, or in the middle of a word, as in zanahoria, meaning carrot. And as you can hear in zanahoria, the letter Z is not pronounced like a Z in Spanish. Spanish doesn't have the Z sound. So in Spanish, a written Z is pronounced like an S if you live in Latin America, including the United States. So for example, you would say zapatos azules for blue shoes. And in Spain, you use a TH sound like zapatos azules. But we'll be using the S sound in our class. The most challenging sound for English speakers learning Spanish is the R, and R has a single form and also a long or trilled R. Every English speaker can pronounce the single R because we actually use it in English, except we spell it with a T. So listen to the word auto, auto. We're not actually saying a T sound, are we? It's more like a D, so auto. And that's the same sound as in the Spanish single R. So the word for gold is oro. So listen to auto in English and oro in Spanish. It's really the same thing. Oro, oro. That's the Spanish single R. In English, when we put a T in front of an R, it actually turns into a CH. So the choo-choo is a train in English. But in Spanish, we stick with a T, and then we use that little quick R sound from the tip of the tongue. So remember, oro and train is tren, tren. So t and r make tren. Here's the sequence you can practice. So we have in English, auto, going to Spanish, oro. And if we have another gold, it's otro. And if we have 3, it's tres. And we already heard tren. So oro, oro, otro, tres, tren. You can practice that. If you can roll your R's, that's great. It's not required. You can speak Spanish without rolling your R's. I don't roll my R's very well, and often I don't bother because it often doesn't sound good. But a good word to practice with is Dracula. So if you can do tren, then you should be able to do Dracula, Dracula, Dracula. And after you say that for a while, you can try rolling the R. So you go from Dracula to Dracula, Dracula. So you can practice there. As I said, I don't do it very well. Spanish spelling isn't that complicated. English speakers have to get rid of double letters, use fewer capital letters, eliminate apostrophes, and learn where to use accent marks. And fortunately, the rules for accent marks are actually really straightforward. In Spanish, you only write double letters when they are actually pronounced. So, for example, the double vowel sequences in words like leer and cooperación. You can hear the 2 vowels there. Double consonant sequences are mostly the double R, as in Pedro, the double L as in llave, which is mostly pronounced like a Y in most parts of the Spanish-speaking world, and the double C in words like acción, where the first one comes out like a K and the second one comes out like an S. acción. So there's lots of cases where we have a double consonant in English and you don't really hear it. So in Spanish, it's written as a single S. So professor versus profesor and profesora, office, oficina, application, aplicación. There's no reason to have a double letter there. So Spanish simply eliminates. Spanish also uses a lot fewer capital letters than English. We only capitalize proper nouns. So that means names of people, places, and organizations. As in mi amigo español Juan, a person, quien vive en Madrid, a place, es católico, no habla inglés y trabaja para Google, an organization. Also, we of course capitalize the first letter of the word in mi amigo, the first letter in the sentence. In English, we capitalize a lot of additional words. Adjectives like Spanish and Catholic, language names like English, and we just don't do that in Spanish. You never need to use an apostrophe in Spanish. In particular, for possessives, we turn them around. So instead of saying John's book, we would say El libro de Juan, no apostrophe. Spanish accent marks are never arbitrary, and it's important to use them correctly. First of all, in order to make a good impression. If you make mistakes with accent marks in Spanish, it's like making mistakes with apostrophes in English. It really makes a bad impression. In addition, the use of an accent mark can change the meaning of a word. Consider the word sí, meaning yes, versus sí, meaning if. Those words, in order to stop them from looking alike, Spanish adds an accent to one of them. Also consider hablo, I speak, versus habló, he spoke. So there the accent mark makes a crucial difference. Hablo versus habló. Accent marks serve three different purposes in Spanish. The first is to distinguish between otherwise identical word pairs. So I already mentioned sí and sí. There are some other examples in this table. Me meaning me versus my, tú meaning you versus your, que and que, se and se. And notice that in each case, the word that gets the accent mark is the one which is a stronger word in a sense. It's a word that can stand by itself, as in sí, or can come at the end of a sentence, as in, for example, es para mí, it's for me. The accent mark on que is very characteristic because every Spanish question word has an accent mark like donde or cuando, and this is to distinguish it from the other word in a pair which is used as a kind of a relative pronoun. So just remember that all question words need an accent mark, just like que versus que. The second purpose for an accent mark is to turn two vowels into two syllables. For example, normally IA is a single syllable, as in diablo, diablo. But in a word like dia, the accent mark on the I turns it into two syllables. Another example is UA, which is normally one syllable, as in guapo, but the accent mark on U turns the word crane into two syllables, grua. In most cases, however, an accent is used to indicate that a word has irregular stress. So regular stress depends on the last sound of a word. If a word ends in a vowel, as in casa, muchacha, participa, todopoderoso, desafortunadamente, then you stress the next to last syllable, regardless of the length of the word. If you stress a different syllable, you have to put an accent mark on it. So if the stress falls on a final vowel, as in sofá, hindú, those have an accent mark. Or if it's three syllables from the end, as in teléfono or dámelo. If a word ends in a consonant, then regular stress falls on the last syllable, as in feliz, profesor, elemental, estereotipar, inconstitucionalidad. And again, it doesn't depend on the length of the word. It's always the last syllable. And if it doesn't fall on the last syllable, it's considered irregular, and that's why you write the accent mark, as in lápiz or azúcar. An important detail here is that final N and final S don't count as consonants for purposes of determining regular stress because they're used for plurals and informals. So just like we have casa with with next to last stress. It's the same thing if we have the plural, casas. Likewise, muchacha, muchachas, participa and participas, or plural, participan, or even the form participamos. Notice how the stress shifts. Participa, participan, but participamos. It's all predictable from the last sound in the word. From todopoderoso, you add an S, and it's todopoderosos. So the stress doesn't shift. So again, if a word violates these patterns, you need to write an accent mark. And this includes words that happen to end in an S or an N, as in inglés or jardín. A lot of these are words that are borrowed from other languages, or also plurals. So you have sofá with an accent mark, likewise sofás with a final S. Another plural example is exámenes. And notice that all the examples that I gave before of words that have final stress because they end in a consonant other than N or S. So Z, R, L, R, D, they're genuine consonants for stress purposes. And that's really all you need to know about Spanish spelling and pronunciation coming in.